Right. Let's get straight into it, because this one has completely, well, it's split the sporting world in two.
It really has.
We are witnessing what feels like the ultimate collision between professional boxing legacy and raw celebrity commerce.
Absolutely. You've got Anthony Joshua, AJ, the former two-time unified heavyweight world champion, an Olympic gold medalist.
A genuine great.
He's stepping into the ring against Jake Paul.
The YouTuber who, to be fair, has successfully transitioned into a full-time professional boxer.
He has, but it's more than just a fight, isn't it? It's a cultural event that really forces us to question what we value in modern sport. The source material surrounding this bout is it's overflowing with tension, with fury, and frankly, outright fear from some quarters.
Exactly. And our mission here is to navigate those sources. This isn't just a breakdown of, who might win.
Yeah, not at all.
It's a forensic examination of the professional heavyweight bout itself.
Oh.
We need to unpack the rules, the staggering financial drivers.
The huge and often very cynical fan speculation.
And maybe most critically, the broader implications this event has for the integrity of boxing as a high-stakes professional sport.
And we have to establish the ground rules right now because they define this entire conversation.
Okay, let's do it.
We're talking about Friday, the 19th of December. It's taking place in Miami.
And the key detail.
The key detail, which you really have to remember, is that this is sanctioned as a professional heavyweight fight.
Right.
It's being broadcast globally on Netflix, and it is not an exhibition.
That word professional, that changes everything.
It means there are genuine life-altering risks involved, which I think we're going to discuss in a lot of detail.
Okay, so let's unpack the financial heart of this event first, because it feels impossible to talk about this clash without first talking about the money.
You can't.
Why is AJ, an elite, top-tier athlete whose reputation is built on facing giants, why is he agreeing to this specific matchup?
The answer is the absolute financial imperative driving this decision. It's that simple. Sources repeatedly emphasize that this fight offers Anthony Joshua the easiest payday of his life.
And we're talking about a mega payday.
A mega payday. The figure that has been relentlessly circulated and substantiated by multiple analysts sits around $92 million.
$92 million?
Yes.
For what is scheduled as an 8-round fight against Jake Paul.
It's a figure that's not just life-changing. It's cited specifically in the sources as being more money than AJ would make fighting anyone else currently available on Earth.
That's the context you need. When you think about his other colossal purses, like what, $20 million against Klitschko?
Which was a huge fight.
A huge legacy-defining fight. And this purse it completely dwarfs it.
It's an almost impossible sum to refuse, isn't it? We've seen other major heavyweight purses, Fury and Usyk, for example, they command massive fees.
Of course.
But usually through quite complex pay-per-view splits that carry an element of risk.
Sure.
This figure for AJ appears to be a guaranteed amount, regardless of the success of the broadcast.
And that explains everything. It explains why AJ's camp completely scrapped a previously planned bout against Cassius Chaney.
A higher risk, lower reward fight.
Exactly.
And the logic from his promotional team, specifically Eddie Hearn, was just utterly blunt about it.
What did he say?
He said the Paul offer was simply too good to turn down.
You can't really argue with that from a business perspective.
From a cynical, purely business perspective, no. AJ is an athlete nearing the latter half of his career. His primary objective now involves maximizing financial security while managing risk.
And this bout achieves both.
Perfectly. Minimum risk, maximum financial reward. It makes perfect business sense, even if it causes a complete firestorm among boxing purists.
But if AJ is going into a high-risk scenario for his physical safety, shouldn't there be more criticism? Isn't the consensus that he's sacrificing legacy for the ledger here?
Well, that's the tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
The sources show a real duality of thought. Many boxing critics are just waving this off as a justified, late-career cash grab, precisely because the competitive risk is viewed as, non-existent.
So the lack of risk justifies the payday.
That's the argument. They're saying, why take a tune-up fight for $10 million when you can take a promotional event for $92 million? The logic is sound, even if it feels a bit jarring to those of us who wish boxing was purely about meritocracy.
Right. Okay, let's pivot to Jake Paul's side of the equation. What's his commercial strategy here? This feels less about a payday for him and more about desperately maintaining relevance.
That is the predominant analysis, yeah. Sources suggest Paul's commercial steam was starting to sort of dissipate.
Really?
Yeah, analysts noted that his proposed fight before AJ, the one against Mike Tyson, was heavily criticized.
It was.
And his previous fight against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. reportedly had quite poor sales figures.
So this AJ challenge,
It's viewed as the necessary last-ditch escalation to save the commercial viability of his entire brand. He has to prove he's willing to face elite opposition to keep that money tap flowing.
and the pressure isn't just internal to Paul's brand, is it? It's coming from the broadcaster, from Netflix.
Precisely. Netflix has entered the live sports sphere very aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
They need viewership, and they need spectacle.
Mm.
And our sources indicate that the platform is putting significant pressure on Paul to step up and fight real fighters.
Yeah, good or go.
That's the phrase used. Go big or go home.
Mm.
And challenging AJ, a globally recognizable, active, elite former champion.
It's the ultimate fulfillment of that requirement.
It is. It's an acknowledgement that the era of him fighting retired UFC stars is, running dry commercially.
So Paul is essentially betting his entire brand on his perceived bravery. It's a brilliant commercial Hail Mary, really.
It is. If he somehow wins, the world implodes and he becomes a certified superstar.
And if you lose,
If he loses quickly, he still gets paid an enormous amount and he gains credibility for even attempting the feat. The whole thing is engineered for commercial success, regardless of the sporting result.
But beyond the cash, we do need to consider AJ's broader career trajectory. Is this fight just about the pension pot, or is there a genuine sporting objective under it all?
The sources suggest a dual purpose. AJ's long-term goal remains a massive bout next year.
The Tyson-Fury fight.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
A domestic mega clash against Tyson Fury in the summer. This fight against Paul is being positioned by his camp as a necessary tune-up,
A tune-up.
a way to shake off ring rust under competitive conditions.
A $92 million tune-up is quite the concept. But is it credible? AJ's been inactive for 14 months since that knockout loss to Daniel Dubois.
Yeah.
He needs rounds, but does Jake Paul really offer the kind of quality required for a legitimate heavyweight tune-up?
And that is the crux of the whole debate. On one hand, you could argue AJ needs to feel the pressure of a big event again. The lights, the crowds, the media scrutiny.
Right, get back in that environment.
And if he gets that feeling while earning a colossal fee, it's financially brilliant.
But on the other hand,
On the other hand, the vast majority of commentators argue that sparring sessions against top heavyweights would provide much better preparation than facing a cruiserweight with limited pro experience.
so what's the consensus?
The consensus is that while it fulfills the mental checkmark of a return fight, it provides very little tactical preparation for someone like Fury or Usyk.
So to make it strategically worthwhile.
He needs to win, and he needs to win explosively.
Okay, so moving from the financial structure to the physical reality of it all, this is where the conversation gets truly jarring. Because despite the disparity, this is a high-stakes professional contest governed by stringent athletic rules.
The sanctioning details are absolutely critical. This is a professional heavyweight bout, fully sanctioned by the Florida Athletic
So
Commission.
it means
It means real punches, real scores, and the potential for real catastrophic injury. It carries a formal record implication for both men. It goes on their records.
Okay, so let's lay out the parameters that really define the severity of this risk.
The contest is scheduled for 8 3-minute rounds,
Standard.
and they will be using standard 10-ounce heavyweight gloves.
For those who don't follow the sport closely, what does that mean?
10-ounce gloves are designed for maximum impact and minimum protection at the highest weight classes. They're what you use to cause damage.
And knockouts.
Knockouts are absolutely permitted, and, well, they're expected.
And there is one stipulation that explicitly highlights the sort of absurdity of the matchup,
The weight limit.
the weight limit imposed on Anthony Joshua.
Yes. AJ has a mandatory weigh-in limit of 17 stone 7 pounds.
Which is about 111 kilograms.
Exactly. And this is significant. AJ typically weighs closer to 18 stone, around 114, 115 kilograms for his major fights. That's where he maximizes his natural heavyweight strength.
So this limit means he has to restrict his bulk.
Ostensibly to mitigate the physical mismatch that Jake Paul faces.
But does forcing AJ to come in lighter genuinely mitigate the risk for Paul? I mean, if AJ sacrifices a few pounds of muscle mass, isn't he often faster and more dangerous anyway?
That is the technical analysis many professionals are offering.
Right.
While AJ has to manage the cut, a slightly lighter AJ is potentially a quicker AJ, especially with his footwork, which is where Paul might try to capitalize.
And more importantly,
Jake Paul is a cruiserweight. He campaigns at cruiserweight, which has a 200-pound limit. That's about 90.7 kilograms.
So even with AJ at 111 kilograms?
The minimum weight difference is over 20 kilograms. That's roughly 45 pounds. The power disparity is just immense, regardless of AJ cutting a bit of weight.
Let's just quantify the gap in pedigree for a moment. When you look at the tail of the tape, the comparison is almost unbelievable. Start with Anthony Joshua's resume.
Well, Joshua is a two-time unified world heavyweight champion,
For the listener, unified means he held multiple major world titles at the same time.
cementing his status at the very top of the sport. He's an Olympic gold medalist. His record shows 25 stoppages and 28 wins.
But his real value is his experience, isn't it?
It is. He has competed in 13 world title fights against the very best of his era.
And those opponents are a who's who of modern heavyweight history.
Absolutely. He faced Alexander Usyk twice, the current unified champion. He fought Vladimir Klitschko, an absolute legend. He had those tough bouts against Andy Ruiz Jr.
And most recently.
That terrifying one-punch knockout of Francis Ngannou.
Right.
He has fought the most defensively adept, the biggest punchers, and the most decorated veterans. His resume is arguably peerless in terms of the sheer quality of opposition he's faced.
Now contrast that with Jake Paul.
Jake Paul began his professional boxing journey in 2020. He has only one loss.
To Tommy Fury.
To Tommy Fury, yes. His 6 wins, which he heavily promotes, came predominantly against former UFC stars. Nate Diaz, Anderson Silva, Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren.
He also has wins against Mike Perry and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
He does, though Chavez Jr.'s career was already, let's marred by external issues by that point.
But the key difference here is the professional boxing skill level of those opponents.
Precisely. While those men are world-class combat sports athletes, their defensive skills and specific boxing training are vastly inferior to that of an elite boxer.
He's been fighting men trained in wrestling and MMA transitions.
Not pure boxing defense and footwork.
Yeah.
And the one time he faced a professional boxer, Tommy Fury, who is considered sort of mid-level in the boxing hierarchy.
He lost.
He lost. And now he's jumping up to AJ's tier. It's an enormous leap. And he's only fought once before at heavyweight.
You can't overlook the physical metrics either. The size gap alone dictates the flow of this fight.
It does. AJ stands at 6'6" with a massive 82-inch reach.
Paul is substantially smaller.
6'1" with a 76-inch reach.
That 6-inch reach disparity,
coupled with the natural heavyweight frame and power, is what justifies the experts' immediate classification of this fight as a substantial mismatch. AJ can land heavy blows from a distance. Paul just can't hope to cover quickly.
And before the bell even rings, the verbal warfare has been pretty potent, setting the tone for the whole spectacle.
AJ delivered a classic one-liner that I think encapsulated the feelings of the entire boxing community.
What was that?
His taunt was simple but very cutting. He just said, "You may call yourself a heavyweight boxer, but let's be honest, you're just heavy."
Ouch. A direct dismissal of his claim to be a genuine top-tier fighter.
Completely.
And Jake Paul, ever the showman, threw down a highly specific prediction.
He did. He was supremely confident, predicting he would knock out Anthony Joshua in the 5th or 6th round.
Right.
And as we transition to the fan reaction, this prediction is absolutely crucial. Because to a suspicious audience, a specific mid-fight knockout prediction is viewed less as bravado.
And more as a potential leak of the script.
Yes. And here is where the deep dive into the source material becomes incredibly charged. The fan and expert reaction is really driven by 2 main overlapping emotions. Genuine concern for safety and overwhelming cynicism that the fight is, well, fixed.
Let's start with the safety concern because it is a terrifying topic.
It is. Experts are not just talking about a competitive mismatch. They are talking about existential risk.
And the immediate, unavoidable reference point is what AJ did to Francis Ngannou.
That knockout was instantaneous and frighteningly clean. Ngannou, you have to remember, was widely regarded as the most powerful puncher in MMA history.
He wasn't just beaten.
AJ didn't just beat him, he slept him clean with one single shot. The fear among commentators is that if AJ hits Paul with a similar nuclear warhead of a punch, it could easily result in permanent and serious physical injury.
Or even a brain bleed.
Exactly, given Paul's lack of professional boxing durability at that weight class.
The fan commentary we pulled from the sources is intensely focused on this physical danger.
It is. One analyst noted that the difference in power between an elite heavyweight and Paul's usual cruiserweight opponents is so vast that the probability of him being catastrophically damaged is much higher than in his previous bouts.
The danger isn't necessarily a long beating.
No, It's a single concussive shot he just hasn't been conditioned to absorb.
And this leads directly to the question of responsibility. If the risk is so immense, why is the fight being sanctioned at all?
The sanctioning body, the Florida Athletic Commission, is bearing the brunt of that criticism. Some fans are openly accusing the commission of allowing a fight that could literally end Jake's life,
Just for the money.
solely for the purpose of a massive gate and tax revenue. Now, to be fair, there is a counter-argument we found.
Okay.
It suggests that the danger of death in boxing usually comes from accumulated damage over many rounds, not necessarily a quick knockout, though the danger of severe brain injury remains paramount in this type of mismatch.
Right. Okay, so moving from the fear of physical injury to the fury over potential fraud, we have to address the rigged circus theory.
Which is dominating all the fan discussions.
It seems to be everywhere.
This suspicion is pervasive across social media and boxing forums. Many longtime fans view Paul's entire career as scripted or paid bullshit.
They see the whole thing as the WWE of boxing.
A choreographed spectacle designed to sell subscriptions, not a genuine contest. And this is partly fueled by the controversial nature of some of Paul's previous opponents, who were seen as not fully committed to winning.
And the skepticism has led to fans setting these extremely high, almost impossible standards for what they will accept as proof that the fight is real.
Indeed. The consensus demand for authenticity is a near-immediate KO for Anthony Joshua.
Nothing else will do.
The logic is that the skill and power disparity is so large, any extended contest must be a fix. We saw comments demanding, "I won't process any result under a round 2 KO as a real fight."
And if Paul survived?
If Paul manages to survive past the third round, many fans have already stated they will still think it is scripted or a fix.
And here's the most profound and frankly disturbing insight we pulled from the source material. The psychological demand that Jake Paul be rushed to the hospital to prove the fight was real. Let's just spend a moment on that.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it, about the complete erosion of trust between the modern boxing audience and the promoters.
It's unbelievable.
Fans feel the only verifiable proof that AJ hit him with true, full, heavyweight intent is if the physical consequences are visible and immediate. One source stated chillingly, "If he is fine and giving a fully coherent post-fight interview, I'm going to assume that KO was fake."
So the only way to remove doubt is observable suffering.
The audience is demanding proof of pain to prove reality.
It's the ultimate measure of cynicism. The audience is demanding a physical emergency to validate the integrity of the sport.
Absolutely. The skepticism is driven by the desire to unmask the circus. If AJ delivers a clean, devastating one-punch KO, but Paul recovers instantly and is smiling 10 minutes later,
The narrative shifts.
the narrative shifts from AJ saved boxing to even the KO was fixed. The pressure on AJ to deliver a knockout that is both rapid and medically serious is, ironically, the only way for him to satisfy the purists.
And this brings us to the dual nature of criticism facing Anthony Joshua. He's either the savior or the sellout.
The purists are super happy that AJ is stepping in to stop this circus.
The enforcer.
Exactly. They see him as the necessary enforcer of professional standards, needing to set an example and put an end to this sideshow by, well, humiliating Paul.
But the contrasting view is that by even participating, AJ is complicit in validating the circus.
Exactly. Critics argue that AJ is now trash for boxing and is facing virtually zero criticism for taking a fight so far beneath him, purely for money.
Right.
There's a strong sentiment that by giving Jake Paul the legitimacy of a professional bout against a two-time former champion, AJ is validating the entire crossover model.
One boxer commented that if Paul even lands a glove on him, it diminishes everything that he's achieved.
And that's the price of the $92 million payday. In the eyes of many, it's a permanent stain on his legacy, regardless of the result.
So now we shift our focus from the fan climate to the practical predictions. Based on the overwhelming technical mismatch, what are the majority expectations for how this fight actually unfolds?
The swift knockout scenario is the overwhelming expectation. The consensus among analysts is unequivocal.
Whiz.
If the fight is real, AJ should finish Paul on the first solid punch that lands. Professionals believe the power differential is just so vast that the outcome should be rapid and decisive.
How rapid, specifically? Are we talking moments or rounds?
Very rapid. Most professionals and analysts are predicting an end within the first or second round.
Right.
Our sources remind us that AJ has 14 stoppages in his 28 wins that occurred within the first 2 rounds. He has the speed, the power, and the accuracy to make this a single-shot affair.
The power differential is key here, isn't it? Especially considering Paul's history.
Absolutely. Paul is not Usyk. He lost to Tommy Fury, a mid-level professional. AJ's power is in a different universe. We've seen him deploy an overhand right that knocked out a legitimate powerhouse in Ngannou. Analysts suggest that because Paul is naturally much smaller, the sheer kinetic energy transfer if AJ lands flush will be immediate and fight-ending.
His jab alone is meant to be a weapon.
His jab alone has been described by some of his past opponents as feeling like a bomb. Paul simply hasn't developed the muscle memory or neck strength to absorb that level of force.
But Paul can't possibly plan to stand there and trade with him. What is his acknowledged survival tactic?
That brings us to the stalling and running strategy. Paul's acknowledged game plan is precisely what you would expect from the underdog.
Survive.
To tire AJ out by running around, then land some solid punches. He has to maximize evasion, use constant lateral movement, and attempt to clinch whenever AJ gets close.
How does that impact the swift KO scenario? Does running guarantee survival past the first round?
It makes a clean, immediate KO harder to achieve. If Paul adopts a genuine strategy of constant running, clinching at every opportunity, and refusing to engage, AJ will have difficulty delivering that rapid, picture-perfect, one-punch knockout.
It's a different challenge to the Ngannou fight.
Completely. Ngannou, for all his lack of boxing defense, was trying to win, which meant he was engaging. Paul will be prioritizing survival above all else. This forces AJ to adapt his approach and cut off the ring meticulously.
And this leads directly into the alternative scenario, which ties back to the commercial pressure from Netflix.
The calculated performance.
Explain that.
This is the intriguing strategic possibility. If Paul runs, AJ may choose to coast for a few rounds.
Why?
Or leisurely punch Paul for 1 or 2 rounds. Why would he do this? To put on a show for the paying audience, and crucially, to maximize viewer time on Netflix.
Right, the streaming services want engagement.
They benefit from longer engagement, not 30-second knockouts.
So AJ would intentionally hold back, not out of respect for Paul, but out of respect for the business model.
Precisely. It would be a methodical dismantling, where AJ touches up Paul, cuts off the ring, and wears him down, setting up a later knockout or technical knockout.
Maybe in the second or third round.
Perhaps. Many analysts are predicting a TKO because Paul is expected to quit after he gets touched up, and he's completely gassed from the exertion of just trying to survive.
So that's the calculated commercial move.
Deliver a thrilling spectacle that lasts long enough to satisfy the subscribers while still delivering the definitive knockout required for legitimacy.
We must briefly touch on the chaos potential, the highly improbable upside-down scenario.
We have to.
Because if Jake Paul wins, the entire landscape of combat sports changes overnight.
It would be seismic. The highly improbable result of a Paul KO or even a win by technical decision after, say, an accidental head clash forces a premature stoppage.
The internet would go wild.
It would cause the internet to go wild. This would be the ultimate validation of spectacle over contest. It would be a moment of chaos mirroring the sheer shock of Mayweather versus McGregor, but with far greater implications for the credibility of heavyweight boxing.
The bookies are laughing at the prospect.
They are, but the potential for absolute anarchy makes it worth mentioning.
So regardless of whether this fight ends in 30 seconds or goes the full 8 rounds, the implications for both Jake Paul's career and the reputation of professional boxing are enormous.
Huge.
Let's analyze Jake Paul's situation first. Commercially, he appears to be in a total no-lose scenario.
Commercially, he has already won. If he is sparked out instantly, he is lauded for his bravery for even getting into the ring with an elite champion.
He's the risk taker.
He fulfills his persona as the risk taker who goes where others fear to tread, and he secures his $92 million level visibility for the next event.
And if he survives past the expected quick finish?
Even better for his brand. If he survives for a few rounds, say making it into the 4th or 5th, he gains enormous skill credibility.
Right.
He will be lauded for his bravery and his skill, and the entire show rolls on to the next massive payday, likely against another B-side professional boxer.
His critics will still call him a charlatan.
But they can't deny his commercial success or the platform he has built through this perceived risk-taking.
But is there a strong counter-argument that this is the final desperate gamble?
Yes. Some critics view this as Paul cashing out.
How so?
They argue that after his previous fight against Chavez Jr. sold poorly, he desperately needed a massive name to get back into the spotlight, and this is the biggest name he could possibly secure.
And in this view?
In this view, if he loses, even if he gains bravery points, he is run out of genuine A-list opponents to challenge, potentially ending this current iteration of his boxing career.
The ultimate unbearable pressure, however, rests entirely on Anthony Joshua's shoulders.
Completely.
He is carrying the burden of saving professional boxing's reputation.
This is the high-wire act AJ is performing. The consensus among purists is that he must beat the shit out of this guy to save professional boxing's reputation as a top sport.
And if he fails to deliver a statement,
The sources warn that we're going to see a ton of amateur YouTubers and TikTokers challenge pro boxers, further diluting the sport's value and credibility.
it's a binary outcome for AJ's legacy, isn't it? Brutal demolition or utter embarrassment.
Precisely. If AJ struggles, if he looks hesitant, if he fails to finish Paul quickly, and that means within 3 rounds,
He'll be heavily criticized.
he will look like an even bigger clown for agreeing to the fight in the first place. And critically, the sport itself suffers reputational damage by appearing to validate the clown show.
The harshest analysis we saw suggests if Anthony Joshua struggles with this fight, it won't legitimize Jake, it will invalidate AJ.
And that's it. The only true validation for him is a rapid, devastating knockout that reminds the world of the chasm between the professional elite and the celebrity crossover.
So he has to deliver the same level of brutality he delivered to Ngannou, but this time against a man who's supposed to be far less dangerous.
That is the benchmark. The purists demand that AJ come in with the intent to set a brutal example. If he doesn't, many sources claim traditional fans will simply stop paying attention, viewing the sport as having permanently sacrificed competitive standards for commercial gain,
It's a lose-lose proposition for his legacy.
offset only by the staggering financial reward.
So we see the irony. The bigger the check, the greater the demand for brutality. He's essentially being paid $92 million to prove that the man he is fighting doesn't belong in the ring with him.
It is the ultimate paradox of modern sports commerce. He is sacrificing his standing with the purest audience for financial security, and the only way to minimize that reputational damage is to be extremely violent, extremely quickly.
As we step back from the sources, the key tension defining this professional fight is abundantly clear. The event is fueled more by its massive financial stakes and the fans' frantic speculation scripted versus real than by any genuine competitive expectation.
And the integrity of professional boxing for a single night rests squarely on Anthony Joshua's fists. The expectation is not merely a win,
Yeah.
it's a complete, undeniable, immediate, and utterly devastating demolition. Anything less fuels the powerful narrative that the sport itself is fundamentally broken.
And that leads us to the critical final thought we want to leave you with as you anticipate this unprecedented clash.
Okay.
Given the nearly unanimous fan and expert belief that AJ needs a brutal early KO to make an example of Jake Paul to satisfy the demands of boxing purists, if AJ chooses instead to extend the fight, coasting for a few rounds, specifically to entertain the audience and maximize viewer time on Netflix, thereby fulfilling the requirements of the streaming contract over the requirements of the boxing purist, does that calculated financial and commercial decision constitute a greater betrayal of boxing's integrity than Jake Paul's mere presence in the ring? It forces us to ask whether this spectacle has now become the true championship in combat sports and whether AJ, despite his titles, is now fighting for Netflix, not for boxing.